Hey, I'm April.
And I'm Bailey.
And this is season 2 of the Nestle podcast. Last year we did something dramatic. We both moved our families across town to the same neighborhood. Our plan was to link arms as we intentionally loved our neighbors.
A few months later, we felt called to link arms with all of you as well. And that's when the Nestled podcast was born.
Here we chat about how to help design meet purpose. Our hope is that you will find inspiration to live more intentionally. We want you to love your home, to love your neighbor, and ultimately to love and serve the Lord.
Every home has a story, and in ours, we're trying to create a culture that's both a launching pad and a soft place to land. So join us each week as we let you peek in our nests. As always, the door will be open. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nestled podcast. I'm Bailey.
And I'm April. Welcome.
We are so glad you're here. I know that typically at the beginning of episodes, you hear us chat back and forth a little bit about our week and what's going on, but we always want to be conscious of your time, and this interview is a little bit longer, but we don't want to cut the meat of it out. So for the sake of caring about you guys and what you have to do today, we're going to just kind of jump right in.
Yeah, and if it's your first time with us, welcome. We're so glad that you found us. And we couldn't think of a single conversation that would give you a glimpse into our heart better than the one that we had with Shannan Martin. We are so honored that she joined us and that she shared what she's doing to love on her neighbors and what she's doing in the ministry of ordinary places. And so here's Shannan.
Today we have Shannan Martin with us. Shannan is an author and just a really incredible lady, and we're so excited to have her with us. Thanks so much for joining us today, Shannan.
It's my pleasure.
To get us started, could you just tell everybody real quickly a little about yourself and your family?
Sure. I've been married for 19 years to my husband, Cory. We met in college, and he's actually the chaplain of our county jail. So I mention that because it's a really important part of our story.
Right.
And it has infiltrated our lives in the very best way. So he's been doing that for just 4 or 5 years now. And then we do have 4 kids. All of them were adopted. And so I'll tell you the order that we adopted them in. That's the easiest. Calvin is 13, and he was born in South Korea. Ruby is 12, and she was born domestically. We have an open adoption with her family. Silas is 10, and he was born in South Korea. And then Robert is 24, and he was born in Chicago and came into our family just about 5 years ago when he was 19.
Okay, so my family also adopted out of birth order, and we got a lot of grief over that leading up to it. Nobody says anything about it now. Yeah. But you really adopted out of birth order.
We did.
Yeah.
I know. It was like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and she was like, yeah, he was a big surprise for you, literally. Literally, he's really big. I was like, yeah, he's huge. He's like 6'4", and he popped in yesterday. He's on his own now. He's not living at our house right now, but he dropped by yesterday, and I mean, he's just a man. He's a gigantic man who I still very much see as my kid. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, men need mamas too. So he's a man, but he still needs a family to come home to, and so
he does. And I'm always, he was on his way to work. He came into our family when he was in jail, and then went to prison, and then came, home to us and was on house arrest. And he is in a work release facility right now for a minute or two. And it's right in our neighborhood, but he was kind of passing through on his way to work. And I'm always like, what can I feed you?
Right.
I mean, he can stay for long, but I'm like, are you hungry? Do you need food? And he usually turns me down. But I was like, do you need Takis? Do you guys know what Takis are?
Yeah, I do. My boys love them.
Some people don't know. I didn't know what they were before we lived here, but he perked up then when I said that. I was like, do you want a whole bag of Takis to take to work? He's like, yes, I do, in fact.
Actually, now that you mention it.
Exactly. I just had to speak his language. He's grown used to like tolerating my food. Most of my food kind of scares him, but yeah, I spoke his language and he went for it. So I just need to buy more Takis.
Right. Just buy stock in Takis, and then
exactly.
I have 4 boys and 1 daughter, and whenever I was not expecting boys, and I asked my aunt who had 2 boys, I was like, what do I do? Whenever they start to get bigger, and she said, just feed them. That's how you keep them happy. That's how you have relationships with their friends, is always offer them food. Always have something.
It's always a good idea.
Yeah.
So one thing that April and I are pretty passionate about, and it continues to be a theme for us, is loving the vulnerable. And obviously adoption and orphan care is close to me. I adopted, but the vulnerable is so much more than that. And I think that the church can miss that a lot of times. And so whenever I hear you talk about taking in a kid who is in jail, bringing him home to your house on house arrest.
Right.
I think that's such a beautiful example of doing that. So can you just share a little bit about your family's story and how you ended up in this place?
Yeah, we were, I have to go back in time and really think about it, but Cory and I lived for a very long time, and really for all of our lives. We lived with this assumption that our job was to make a life for ourselves and for our kids that was as safe and peaceful and comfortable as possible. And, we also thought, go to church, tithe. I mean, we had always grown up doing those things. Those were part of our lives. We both had really wonderful childhoods. Our parents are all still married. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was very idyllic. But the problem is we started to see, that our central purpose was to keep ourselves as far away from pain and discomfort as possible. So, at the time we had two of our kids. So we had Calvin and Ruby. They were both pretty young. And we just had our world rocked. And there's just no better way to say it. We listened to a sermon series online. And in the sermon series, they talked about all the things that you just said, that our job is actually to care for the vulnerable, to walk with the oppressed, to have proximity with the poor. And we're just sitting there in our adorable farmhouse, with this long lane surrounded by cornfields. And not that any of those things are bad.
Right.
But that was where we thought that we wanted to be forever. We bought that farm and it was like, this is it. We've arrived. This is like our dream farmhouse. This is everything we wanted. And we just kind of, we sat back, and life was not by any means super easy. I mean, I didn't find it super easy or natural to be the mom of like tiny babies. That was a hard time for me. And I wasn't wired for that in some ways. So I don't mean to say that, everything was wonderful, but, we had plenty of money. We had great reputations in the community. We had all of these things that we thought we wanted. And at the point that we believed God was telling us that he had more for us, and that more for us was going to look like less, we didn't know what to do. I mean, we walked around in kind of a stupor for a while. What we know about God is that he doesn't generally unfurl a blueprint of our entire lives in front of us and say, okay, I'm going to ask you to do these kind of weird things, but just look where it's going to end. It's all going to be fine.
Right.
I mean, it was like, take this one weird step and you don't know why. And most people are going to think that you're wrong and that you're getting it wrong. You're not going to have a lot of backup, but do this thing and then do this thing. And, so we felt in some ways like we were kind of wandering around in the wilderness. We didn't know where we were going, but this kind of beautiful thing happened for Cory and I. And that, and this was at this point now, this was quite a few years ago. But at that time, I just remember thinking like, oh, we are actual adults, and it's okay if our parents don't necessarily understand why we're doing this. Like, we get to make our own decisions. Thankfully we were very much on the same page, which did make it a lot easier. But it really kind of galvanized our marriage in that, like, okay, we're just doing this together and everybody thinks we're nuts or worse.
Right.
We're just going to keep moving in the next right direction. And so it did land us here in this really ordinary and kind of shabby and really diverse neighborhood that we just have. It has changed everything about our lives. It has changed, our neighbors have changed the way we see the world. They've changed the way we see our faith. They've split our hearts and our world wide open. And this is where we landed. to our great surprise. So, for us, it is about learning to walk towards the pain of people around us rather than taking a sharp detour around it. And what that means is that life a lot of times feels more sad than it used to.
Right.
And our hearts feel broken in ways they didn't used to. And I don't mean that in a real kind of churchy, like, oh, our hearts are broken for the poor. You know what I mean? Like, this is like watching people we dearly love suffer and watching them suffer through the struggle of addiction and watching them suffer through losing custody of kids and trying to earn custody back. Like, these really difficult scenarios are playing out around us constantly. And so we get to love and be loved by the people around us, and it's the only way I want to live now.
Yeah.
It's we feel more sadness, but we also feel more joy. We also feel more celebration. It's more of everything.
Yeah. One time we had a pastor who said along those same lines, he said, whenever you cut off your lows, you're also cutting off your highs. And so if you're just kind of living in this middle where you don't want to feel the hurt, you're also not going to experience joy to the fullness because you're not allowing yourself to feel fully. And sadness and brokenness is part of the world that we live in. And as I hear you talk, the Lord is confirming in me so many things of what we have done and chosen in our lives, but what an honor that God would reveal himself to us in that way and allow us to do something that seemed crazy to a lot of people, but ultimately that we get to kind of, I would say, lead the way for some people around us who are looking at us, and then they look around and look at their own lives and say, what are some ways that I'm feeling really comfortable and not really getting outside of myself? One of the things that you said on Instagram that I believe is a quote from your book, and I can't wait to read it. We're really excited about it. That said, we cannot love what we do not know. We cannot know what we do not see. And I just think that that's beautiful.
Right, because you have to open your eyes.
It's something that we're trying to teach our kids.
Right.
See people that we're trying to do ourselves. Notice your neighbor. Notice the people around you.
And for me, it began, like, that part of the journey began in the most basic way. And honestly, I wrote a good bit about it in the book. So you will get to read some of that. But it's almost one of those things that, like, when I say it out loud, I'm like, it just sounds so basic. Like, but for me, it started with literally looking around my neighborhood. Like, this isn't some, I didn't go into this with some big spiritual awakening in mind. It was just like, I'm going to start walking my kids to school every day and looking at the sky and noticing how the trees are changing and noticing, the other neighbors that I'm walking past. It was just a really fundamental, like a spiritual practice is what it became. I didn't know that that's what it was going to be, but it became kind of this opportunity to, it became prayer, it became worship. And along the way, as I was starting to find my place where, maybe we have to search a little bit harder to find the beautiful in it. As I started to really seek the beauty of my place, I loved it more. And as I loved it more, I loved the people around me more. Like, it rolled, one into the next. And the cool thing that I didn't necessarily understand until, at the point that I was in it, this is how Jesus lived.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to miss it because it sounds so basic, but when you're talking, April, like, Jesus lived in proximity with people who were suffering.
Right.
He chose them. There's a really, and I forget exactly where it is in the Bible. It's in one of the M's, I think, Matthew or Mark. I'm not sure. But it's like the intro to another story, and it's just kind of casually like, and Jesus was visiting Lazarus the leper and blah, 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 and goes into the whole story. Like, that's not the story. But it is, because the story is like Jesus was just hanging out with this dude who happened to be somebody with leprosy
Mhm.
who we know is not somebody that anybody would have been near.
Mhm.
And Jesus put himself in proximity with suffering people, and he was constantly talking about birds and flowers and
Mhm.
you know, all of these agricultural metaphors. And I mean, he was in tune. He was in tune with the physical world, and I think there's something there.
Mhm. Absolutely. I know that you don't know us or our story, but they parallel yours in a lot of ways, I think, and it's very encouraging for us to see somebody who's a few years ahead of us in it, because we're neighbors. We've been in this neighborhood for a year now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for us, we were living in a different part of town very comfortably. And for me, I had this light bulb moment when I saw the video of the children who were getting arrested at the pool. Do you know what I'm talking about, in Texas?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it broke my heart, and I realized this is the first time, it was like a veil was lifted for me. It was like suddenly white privilege made sense to me when it didn't before. All these things.
Yeah.
And me and my husband were talking about it, and I text April, who, had we even started our business at the time? I don't know.
I can't remember
If we were working together yet or not. But I text April, and I was like, this happened. She was out of town. This happened. We're heartbroken. I think we're going to move to Midtown. And she was like, Lance and I are saying the same thing. And so it was so helpful for us. April's husband is the pastor of our church. But it was so helpful for me and my husband to be able to say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to move our family to not the best part of Midtown either.
Right.
But we're going to have somebody to do it with us. And
Yeah.
I know everybody doesn't have that.
Right.
But whenever we got here, we had the intention of surrounding ourselves with people who are different than us. But then we got here and we're like, how do we do this? And we did the exact same thing. We started walking the neighborhood, and we walk with our kids every day.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you guys had each other. We, when we moved here, we had no one, and we were still kind of suffering some losses that had come along the way. People that just had a hard time. They just had a hard time.
Yeah.
So, we were very much in that place of loneliness in some ways. But what it forced us to do was to kind of just be like, well, here we are.
Right. Yeah.
And, there are other people here too. So maybe they can just be our new friends.
Right. Maybe these can be our people.
Yeah. Instead of looking so hard for people who align with our belief system, or, same socioeconomic status, same ethnicity. I mean, all these things that we've been so used to, just really being surrounded by people who are very much like us.
Mhm.
We found ourselves in a situation where it was just like, it was either we were going to be lonely or we were going to get over it and learned what it means to be with people who, like you said, they're pretty different from us, but they're also pretty similar.
Right.
We all kind of want the same things. We want to be trusted. We want to be, we want to belong. We want somebody to laugh at our jokes. Yeah, we want to be known.
Yeah.
We just want to be, loved for who we are. And no matter who we are, no matter what our particular baggage looks like, we all have some.
Right.
And we all, we don't want that to define us.
Right.
And so that's been a really beautiful thing for us, because now we've been here for 6 years. And so it's fun for me to think of where you guys are at. Like, in some ways 6 years feels like 10 years, and in some ways it feels like a minute. And we just see that, and that's really the heart of this next book. Where it's at is like, it's at the long game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes a long time to build meaningful relationships. There are neighbors who we've now lived near for 6 years that just this year we kind of crossed that, and for some people it happened more quickly. But, to be able to commit and to say, we're just going to be here until this is home, and it is home now. We're going to be here until the people around us know that we mean it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be here through the good and through the bad. And we're just, we're not trying to drum up business for God.
Right.
I don't think he needs us to do that, but we're just living our life together. Right before, a minute before we started recording this, I got a text from my neighbor 2 houses down, and she's a regular part of my life. She's not like the person I go on vacation with. She's not somebody who I'm spending my free time with necessarily, but she's my neighbor, and we've been neighbors now for 6 years, and she has my back, and I have her back, and our kids are friends, and we do hang out now and then more than we used to. It's fun to watch it unfold. But anyway, she texted me and said, "My can opener just broke. Do you have one that I could borrow?" And I was like, "I'm getting ready to record something in 1 minute. I will leave it on the porch for you." It's so basic. It can be so basic. We don't have to overcomplicate things.
And I think people need to hear that. First, they need to hear that it takes time, that sometimes your neighbor, it is the smile and wave and hey for a long time. And some people, you move in, we're actually flipping a house a couple of streets over and moving into it. And sometimes you meet your neighbor and they're like, I would love to come in, that day, And so there's both, but you can't be discouraged in the long game. Because it is a lengthy thing, but I also think that people need to hear that it is the simple.
Yeah.
We don't have to complicate it.
Right.
And if your husband or you are not on board with moving necessarily, you can do it where you're at too.
Absolutely. This neighbor that I'm talking about right now, they are, as over the past 6 years, the neighborhood has changed a little bit in some really beautiful ways. She's very much like I am. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like the paper, on paper. We certainly have other middle-class neighbors. We certainly have plenty of white neighbors. Like, I don't want to paint a picture of something that it's not.
Right. Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be a really beautiful thing. It isn't always, because there's a lot of tension with some of those aspects that needs to be wrestled through all the time. Like, I feel like no matter where we're physically living, if we're not constantly wrestling through tension, we might not be quite where we need to be. And that doesn't mean physically. That doesn't mean we need to put our house on the market and move, but it means we need to be finding some pain to walk towards somewhere. We need to be finding, access into some of the injustice in our community. Yes. And at the point that we do those things, no matter where we live, I have friends who live in the country and do this. I have friends who live in the suburbs and do this. So I feel like in some ways it's easier for me because, it's a low income neighborhood. We are, most of our friend group is people who have been incarcerated and who have grown up in poverty and all of these things. This is our circle for the most part, but I believe you can do it wherever you are. You might have to look a little bit harder. You might have to drive down the road. But it's there, and it's important. Like you said, Bailey, like it's so real to say the veil just fell, like it dropped. And it's like you just don't know something until you know it.
Right.
And then you can't unknow it.
You can't unknow it. And you can't make somebody else see it.
No.
That can be so frustrating. But it's like, we can't take credit for that veil lifting from our eyes. I don't know what it was, other than just God realizing, like, okay, everything has led up to this moment, and hold on to your seat. But this is why it's so important, and it encouraged me to hear you say that, because it's like, when I write more and more about these things, you know what? A lot of people aren't going to necessarily get it. A lot of people are going to hate it. A lot of people hate when I write about white privilege or poverty or addiction or injustice, whatever the case may be. But you know what? Maybe that was the moment for somebody. Maybe that was the moment for one person who was like, oh,
Right.
So this is why it's important to tell these stories with as much tenderness and sensitivity and respect and dignity as possible. But this is why it matters.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's even just it's privilege still, but that we have the opportunity to be a bridge. But you said you've got this circle of friends that have this hard pass,
Right.
and then you've got the other people peppered on your street that look so much like you, more like you on paper, but you get to be the bridge between those to try and help.
I had this epiphany, and this is something I will for sure write about at some point, and I just haven't yet. So you're hearing this first.
Yeah, breaking news. Yeah.
Breaking news. I told Cory later that afternoon, I was like, I had this epiphany. And even as I was saying it, I was like, I feel like maybe I've had, how you have an ephany, but then you forget it, so you have to have it again. It's probably one of those things. He didn't seem to be like as shocked and surprised. But I was like, you know what? I think the reason we're here, meaning like in this neighborhood and in this life, is to point our other privileged friends to pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about like fixing the pain, which we've always kind of known. And we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes, like it's not our job to fix any of this pain, and we can't anyway. So we're not here to fix it, but we definitely are here to feel it. But I think the extra layer is like, oh, like you just said, like I get to kind of expose, that's maybe not the best word, but like I get to shine a spotlight on this pain for other people, to introduce other people to the pain in our city, to introduce other privileged people living across town. Like, this is what's happening in your city, under all of our noses in my neighborhood. Like, this is what's happening.
Yes.
And I think that's, it is a privilege. And, I just think I want to be always pretty aware of my privilege, but I also feel like, it kind of is what it is. And rather than despising it, we have a real responsibility to carry that privilege well.
That's true.
To wield it in important ways, and to use it to make our communities better.
That's right. That's so true. And one of the things that I think the Lord has taught me, and the reason that He has given me grace in this area, is that I don't think there are people, for the most part, in the church that are like, I just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that there's just, we don't know.
We don't.
People just don't know.
Right.
And so, like you said, it's just an opportunity to spotlight something and to say, did you know this is going on in our own community? And sometimes we don't know because we don't want to know, because of this pursuit of comfort.
Right.
And I think that that's just our flesh, and what we desire is protect and comfort and, take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
But this call of Christ is, you die to self.
Yeah.
You love someone even beyond your love for your own self. And so sometimes that means hurting when you don't have to hurt. Like,
Right.
you don't have to
It's
join in
choosing
someone else's
Yeah.
pain.
It's choosing the pain. Yeah.
But I do think that people, once they know, then they get to do something about it.
Right.
Right.
Then it's on you. And I write about
Yes.
this quite a bit in the next book, because I have a lot of those moments still where it's like, as we're paying attention to our place, all of these problems that exist way up here that just make us crazy, make us want to withdraw, overwhelm us. I mean, times are tough in a lot of ways
Yes.
for a lot of people, and certainly a lot tougher for most people than for me. But we're feeling that tension, we're feeling that fracture. As we're paying attention to our place, you find all those problems trickling down, and you see that they exist somewhere within your line of vision. And at the point that you see those problems, then we can choose to say, this isn't my problem. Problems that are way up here in the clouds, like, there's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
There's just not. When we see it in our own communities and in our own neighborhoods and in the people's lives around us, we do have a choice. I mean, we can choose at that point, like, do we get involved, or do we pretend like this never happened? We pretend like we didn't see this. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, I have wrestled with that more times than I care to admit, where it's like, man, you notice something and it's like, I don't have time for this.
I don't want this burden.
I don't want this burden. I don't have capacity for this. And
Yes.
honestly, there are times that we don't. There are times that you just don't have capacity, and I don't know what to say about those times. But I think more often than not, that is an invitation. That is an invitation to, to lay down our lives. To just recap the verse that you just shared. I mean, you cling to your life and you're going to lose it, and you surrender your life for the sake of my kingdom and you're going to find it. And that's where we have the invitation to find our lives.
Yeah.
To anyone listening, if they are in a neighborhood where they do have a friend, I would just encourage them to link arms with them. Be thankful that you have somebody. Because some of those times where you were saying, like, there are times that I can ignore something, but if April texts me and says, do you see that ambulance? Like, I can't ignore it anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and there are times, by the way, I wrote a chapter called Arms Linked. That's the name of one of my chapters.
I'm telling you, we're soul sisters.
We're so tuned. It's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I remember writing desperate blog posts, early into our time here, saying, like, we just want somebody else to help give rides to people. Like, we just cannot be given the rides. Like, this can be so basic, people. Like, we need other hands in the game here. And now 6 years in, so you guys kind of have that collaboration already. You've got like a, hey, I can't do this today. Can you? And we haven't cultivated it, but that has been cultivated around us, that there are other warm bodies with cars,
Yes.
Like, I will never forget what this happened a couple years ago when I was in the middle of writing, a year or so ago, I guess. And there's a family, so many people in our community don't drive for a whole host of reasons. But this young kiddo, I was at the bus stop and he said something about, he needed a ride to something at the middle school, which is across town. And I'm thinking through, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he said, oh, Tony's doing it. I was like, who's Tony? He's like, Tony, the new neighbor. And I'm like, thank God for Tony. I mean, I know Tony very well at that point. I know him a lot better now, but I'm just thinking, like, hallelujah.
Right.
There are people here that can help drive people around when they need rides. It's a huge blessing. So as we link arms together, it just distributes that burden, if we want to frame it that way. But it also, it's like we're all experiencing the gift. I mean, I think if we can focus on the gift more than the burden, that's where we see God's goodness around us.
It's so true.
Yes.
It's so true.
Okay, so for everyone who loves everything that you just said, which I'm pretty sure all of our listeners are going to, where can they find your book and when does it come out?
The book comes out October 9th, so real soon.
Yes.
And you can, if you're into like one-stop shopping or you want to see kind of more of the story, and I think you can, I'm sure, yes, you can download or read the first chapter before you buy it. It's all over at ministryofordinaryplaces.com. And then really you can find the book anywhere books are sold. So, all the normal book places, it'll be there. Hopefully it's going to be in a lot of your, in your libraries and in your bookstores and, passed between neighbors.
In the little libraries.
Yeah, all the little libraries popping up.
Yeah. We love the little libraries.
And then how long do people have to get the freebies?
Those will be open up to launch day. So you have up till October 8th. Will this come out?
This will come out next Wednesday on the 3rd. So people will have a few days,
5 days from listening now to get some freebies.
So, I mean, just to put in a little plug, like when you pre-order, you don't pay until it ships. And Amazon is now telling us, this is also breaking news, that they're people who pre-order through Amazon, it's going to arrive. It's not going to ship on release day. It's going to arrive on release day.
Awesome.
So you'll be one of the first people to get it in your hands if you pre-order. You're guaranteed the lowest price on Amazon when you pre-order. And you get some great things, including some really beautiful artwork that you can download, and you can put it on anything you want to. I have mine on a gigantic canvas. You can check that out on the book website, or even better, on my Instagram page. But yeah, there's some good stuff.
Okay. And where can everybody find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Those are my two favorite social media platforms, at Shannan Writes, and it's SHANNAN Writes. And my blog is shannonwrites.com. And I'm also on Facebook too. So I'm everywhere.
Yay.
Everywhere the people are.
Everywhere the people are. We're so excited about the print. We're like, where are we going to put it in our house?
know.
And it's like a little conversation piece.
I mean,
It's all our favorite colors.
I took it to its limit. I was like, I don't know if this can handle being blown up this big, but it can handle it.
It is beautiful.
Beautiful. It's
How big is that canvas that you printed?
I mean, it's like 2 by 3 feet ish.
Yeah.
It's massive. But I've seen people, it's my screensaver on my computer too. I've seen people print it onto a phone case, or you can print it. My sweet little mom, who they are like technologically in the dark. They do not have cell phones. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But she printed it on a piece of paper from the printer, and that works too. So
She's enjoying the artwork from her baby's
is.
book.
Yes.
It is.
And although we started out much more as a design podcast, and the Lord turned our podcast to hospitality and getting this message out, but everyone should know that Shannan is sitting in one of the cutest little areas I've ever seen on her little gray sofa with her cute little
Mustard
yellow pillow and her
Guys,
art behind her.
You're speaking my language.
And that wood wall, I mean, my heart is
See?
just really...
So you guys you appreciate the mugs.
Yes.
I have such a place in my heart for decorating, and that is where like I said, that's kind of how my blog got started. Pretty things matter, and creating beautiful spaces is something some of us enjoy, and that's a way we get to be creative. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I wrote so much about hospitality in this book. You guys are going to love it.
So
I
excited.
cannot wait to read
I
it.
can't wait
I'm really
either.
excited. Okay, we know we're running out of time with you, so we're going to really quick do our love it or leave it. Okay, the first one, you're a writer, so I feel like you'll have an opinion on this one way or the other. Audiobooks.
Leave it. Ah,
That's
Okay.
say
No
that.
judgment if people buy your book on audio, but that's fine.
If you're not going to read it, get it on audio. Please. Okay, the next one. Football.
Leave it. I'm so sorry.
Are you from the South?
No, I'm from the
No.
Midwest, but I went to a real tiny public school with no football team, and so I never caught
the
bug.
football bug. See, I cheered in high school, but I still wasn't into football. But then I went to college at Auburn University, and they're a big football school, and so now we do the whole football thing.
one of my dearest neighbors. His name is Mac in the book. He shows up in the book, and he's in 9th grade this year. He started on the football team, and I'm like, okay, this is who I am now. Like, I think I'm going to catch on to it now because I finally have a reason. So ask me next year.
Yes.
Okay, we will.
Okay, so you said you like house design and decor. How do you feel about wallpaper? Wallpaper's back.
Love it.
Awesome.
I have wallpaper in my desk nook. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I saw the picture. I forgot, but I did see that picture.
It's
so cute.
I love it, and I keep telling. We've lived in a lot of old homes before this, where we were like peeling off wolf wallpaper, peeling off horse wallpaper, and so Cory, I could get the itch to wallpaper something else, but Cory is. I'm not sure I'm going to convince him.
Yeah, my husband's the same way. I'm like, but it comes off so easy now.
Yeah, they have this. I just had this conversation with my husband for the new house, and I was like, the kind that I'm talking about is removable. It's not like paper and paste.
Oh, do it.
Okay,
it's fall. What do you think about pumpkin spice?
I love it.
Okay.
I mean,
I feel like people love it or hate it.
Most people think of it in terms of like Starbucks and coffee, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but I love all of the other pumpkin things. I'm here for it.
But you love mugs, so you're a tea person. Is that right?
Tea person, and I change my mugs out seasonally. So here before long, I'm going to be putting all of my fall mugs on the rack. the book cover mugs are the summer mugs.
Oh, so the book cover mugs are your mugs. I love
They're
that.
my mugs, yeah. They are
That's
my
awesome.
mugs, and they are all from the thrift store. So I probably didn't pay more than like 50 cents for any of them. So I have this massive collection, aka it's a big old problem that
Yeah.
it's like a little bit neurotic, but that's my decorating.
Yeah, if it's what you love, that's
like,
what, you know.
That's how I mark the seasons, and I ain't sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Don't
Do
be
what
sorry.
you love.
Look, we preach minimalism in so many ways, but then we did a video showing my mantle, and I had to be like, okay, just so you know, I don't go minimal with the stuff on my walls.
Right.
I get rid of all the excess, and I can decorate with all the stuff I love.
Yes.
So.
Right.
Yes.
I'm with you.
Okay, last one. How do you feel about a bold front door?
I love it. I have just a plain builder's grade home. Our home was brand new when we moved in, but it was like through a neighborhood grant. Like everything is real basic. If I could have I've toyed with painting the door, but I've never quite, I see other people pull it off. I'm not sure that I know what I would want. What I love is like a really beautiful wooden door. Like our house is white with just plain white, no shutters or whatever. If money was no object, I would have like a beautiful, like actual wood door. That would be my favorite. I would love that. I love contrast of like texture and finish and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, since you can't do that right now, you can paint a door with like a sample size. So go paint your door.
Do it.
You should do it.
Yes.
Look,
Paint with that color of that pillow behind you.
Yeah. Do it. It's so
I don't know
easy.
how to commit to the right color. It's
Well, then you
Paint
painted
it over it.
Look, I painted a door lime
Nice.
green and painted over it, so it's like it's
What
fine.
color are your doors?
Mine is coral, and you know
Okay.
what the best part about that is? When I walk my neighborhood and people are like, "Where do you live?" and I tell them, I'm like, I probably shouldn't say my street name, the house with the coral door, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So like, it's an
I love it.
identifying thing. So you
Yes.
should paint your door.
My new house, I'm painting my door mustard yellow. So,
Do it.
Okay.
inside and outside.
Do it. Post it on Instagram and
Inside
tag
and
You
us.
don't have to do inside, but I am doing mine inside as well.
You could go back and look. Somewhere recently I posted a picture, although maybe it was on stories, I don't know. I posted a picture of the front of my house and I was like, oh my gosh, my door is so hideously dirty. It's a white door, and a couple people even commented in a funny way, but like my door needs help one way or the other, so maybe now is the time.
It's
Yeah.
the time. I've had a red door. As a matter of fact, I was telling Bailey earlier, when my husband and I got married, no one did colorful doors. This was,
Yeah.
almost
Especially not
20
where we
years
were living
ago,
at that time.
and where I was living. And everyone in the whole community, it was a small town, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're the one with the red door?" And I was like, "I am.
You're the one.
You're the one with the red door." But I've had a
Okay,
teal door.
Does it have to be like special paint?
No.
We've used all different kinds of paint. Literally, the coral that we used for our front door, we did it the first day we moved in, and it was a sample size, just regular sample size paint.
Mm-hmm.
Just like regular latex paint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it still works. I mean, I just cleaned it off because it had gotten dirty, but
Yeah.
all the paint's still there. Like,
And if you have boys, I mean, you have a daughter too, but I usually go with a little darker color because my boys are disgusting.
I have all
Right.
girls.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the picture.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. Well, thanks,
exciting.
Shannon. It was so great
Thanks,
talking
guys.
to you,
You're
and I know
so
everyone
fun.
Yes.
Yep, I loved it.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Hey, we are so encouraged by Shannan, and we hope that hearing her story and reading her book and just hearing the conversation that we had with her will encourage you as well. And one thing we want to make really clear, Shannan is several years ahead of us, and she has wisdom that we don't have. And she and her husband kind of went at this alone. And on the other hand, we have each other, and we
Right.
also have a community of people that moved into this neighborhood with us that have linked arms with us. And so we do not want it to sound like just the two of us, were so brave and bold, but there really are people around us who have the same heart for reaching out and loving the people around them and are in this with us. And so we're so thankful for that because it's so encouraging to us. With that being said, whether you are in Shannan's boat and you feel like you're going at it alone, or whether you're like us and you have people around you who believe the same way that you do and who really just want to invest in their community and love the people in your neighborhood, and you're doing that together, whatever boat you're in, we hope that you're encouraged by what you've heard today.
Yes, and we would love for you to share your successes and your failures with us over on our Instagram page. You can find us at Nestled Podcast. We have created the hashtag Where I Nestle, which is a great place to kind of build community with one another and encourage one another as we walk this thing out. Also, if you're listening for the first time and you're like, I want to jump in and I have no idea where to start, we have put on our Instagram page a fall checklist that has 3 different columns, one to encourage you how to love your home, one to encourage you to love your neighbor, and one to encourage you just to have some fun. So be sure to go over there and check that out, and then use the hashtag NestledAutumn to encourage each other in that way.
Yeah, we can't wait to see what you guys are doing this fall. And we hope that that checklist is just a simple way. It's a great thing for us to just be able to look at it and be like, what are we doing? And if we're kind of in a lull and we're dragging a little bit and aren't really being intentional, or even if we're not having much fun, it's just an easy way to go back and go, okay, what is something I can do? And just kind of that forward thinking and being purposeful with our days.
Right. It's not graded. You don't lose points if you miss a few.
Right.
It's just some ideas.
Yes.
Guys, thank you as always for listening. We are always just humbled as we see that you guys are actually downloading and listening to our words. So thank you for that.
We hope that you have been encouraged today, and thank you for coming and peeking in our nest.
We hope you come back next week. As always, the door will be open.